Information fueled,
opinion driven. This is Nashville's Morning News with Dan Mandis.
And so, my fellow Americans,
we talk news.
7:07, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Good morning to you, friends. Welcome on in to Thursday, May 23rd, along with Johnny B, Ken Weaver. Matthew Hurtt is finally back. Matthew, of course, our grassroots political analyst and, funny behind-the-scenes story. Matthew, have you checked all of the text messages that I sent you when you were out of the country?
Oh, my goodness, Dan. Some of the headlines I missed when I was in Dominican Republic for 2 weeks working on a presidential election where the conservative candidate won. I was happy to be down there. But I missed a whole lot of crazy headlines, and it's great to be back stateside, and it's especially great to talk to you about all of, the crazy stuff that's happening here as we move into this election cycle.
Well, I'm curious, though, what did you get to do? I'm actually kind of fascinated by that experience. Before we focus on what's going on today, last couple of weeks, what was that experience like?
So many of your listeners know I work full-time at an organization called Leadership Institute, and we train conservative activists here in the U.S. to run for office, to win election for school board, for state house, for U.S. Senate, all the way up to the top of the ticket. But internationally, we have partners all over the world through an organization called the International Democracy Union. And this is a coalition of right-of-center conservative political parties. And it just so happens Leadership Institute has a relationship with the right-of-center political party in Dominican Republic. I went down there just to get out of the country for a week or two and connected with a young man there who is the vice minister of their immigration. Of course, Dominican Republic shares an island with Haiti, which has no functional government, no functional court system, and is run by gangs. And so they have a serious immigration problem at the border between Haiti and Dominican Republic. But I connected with friends down there and went and provided training. I talked about what I do in the United States as an activist, as a chairman of a local political party, and what I do here in communicating with you and your listeners. And then on Saturday, midway through the trip, I went to a presidential rally with the incumbent president who won. He's the conservative candidate, and it felt like a Trump rally. It was nice. It was exciting. It was high energy. They swept the elections. He won in a three-way race with two other presidential candidates. He won with nearly 60% of the vote. Dominicans in the Dominican Republic, and many in New York City, where many moved and are organized politically, are conservative. They have conservative principles, conservative values, and more so than almost any other Caribbean or Central or South American nation, the Dominican Republic understands what it means to live under authoritarian rule. They were ruled by Haiti, by the Haitians for a long time after Spain gave them up. And they threw off the chains of authoritarianism from the Haitians, and now they have a disdain for big government, for socialism. I walked by the Communist Party headquarters in Santo Domingo. I took a photo, and those guys, the communists, get like less than 1% of the vote. Dominicans in the Dominican Republic understand what it means to be free, and they defend that at the ballot box. And it was such an exciting experience to go down there and experience another country's democratic process. I've been to Canada and to Poland and to Denmark, where I've seen elections play out, and this was by far the most exciting opportunity. It was great to be down there, and I came back tanned, ready, and rested. And now I should be in Nashville this weekend enjoying the weather, unfortunately, for Memorial Day weekend, seeing my family.
Yeah, lots of storms. All right, let's get to politics in this country. There's a big news story this morning. Nikki Haley saying that she will vote for Donald Trump.
I put my priorities on a president who's going to have the backs of our allies and hold our enemies to account, who would secure the border, no more excuses. A president who would support capitalism and freedom. A president who understands we need less debt, not more debt. Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I have made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump. Having said that, I stand by what I said in my suspension speech. Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me and not assume that they're just going to be with him. And I genuinely hope he does that.
Golf clap. Sounds like a Biden rally, as we said earlier. So were you surprised, Matthew Hurtt, when you woke up this morning and found out that Nikki Haley was going to vote for Donald Trump?
I was not surprised, and you and I have spoken about this before. Nikki Haley does still have a constituency of voters in the Republican primary who are not comfortable voting for Donald Trump, and that's okay in our system. But as you and I have talked about before, she needed to come out and say this and give permission to her voters, to her supporters, that she was going to go and vote for Donald Trump. This was a big question mark for a couple of months. And this now, as we talk about polling, as we talk about, especially as you get into August, September, and October, and you see how many Republicans, quote, come home, those are the ones who claim they won't support the nominee or support the candidate in the general election. We're going to see a little bit of a bump in Republicans who are going to come home from that wing of the party, and it's important. Nikki Haley and Donald Trump had stark differences on a number of issues, including foreign policy, and it is okay for Republicans to disagree and debate those issues in a primary, but it isn't okay if we want to win, if we want to defeat Joe Biden, for us to go into a general election system with that disagreement still on the table. And for Nikki Haley to do that, it was a smart move politically for her if she wants to do anything in the future, but it was also a responsible move for those institutionalists, people who want Republicans to win year over year, election over election, for her to say that and give permission to her voters to say it's okay to vote for Donald Trump. And that's okay for Trump supporters to say, welcome, thank you for the support, and now let's go win this together.
When you say she's giving her supporters permission, if I was a Nikki Haley supporter, I'd be like, wait a minute, you told us that he was chaos. You told us that, all of these negative things that she said about Donald Trump for a long time. Now you're telling us he's okay. So it's almost like, will the real Nikki Haley stand up? Do you think that, some of her supporters will say, well, it's fine that you're giving us this permission, but we don't want to vote for Donald Trump. So I'm going to ask you from the real world standpoint, how big of a deal will this be when you look at the polling and when you look at, how close this race is? Could this put Donald Trump over the edge, or is this a sort of like, we'll see what happens? Answer that coming up next. 7:15, time to check the roads. Watch 7:15 on Nashville's Morning News. As far as your weather goes, thunderstorms today, a high of 76, and right now 67 at Super Talk 99.7. Matthew Hurtt is joining us. And so, Matthew, the real world impact of Nikki Haley supporting Donald Trump.
There are two kinds of voters who voted for Nikki Haley in the Republican primary, and those are Republicans who didn't want to vote for Trump in a primary process, and Democrats who crossed party lines to vote. In Arlington, Virginia, where I live, there were about 15,000 votes cast in the Republican primary, about 8,000 of which were Democrats crossing party lines to vote for Nikki Haley. Those individuals are not going to now vote for Donald Trump in the general election. But the individuals who voted for Nikki Haley in the primary, who would have voted for Marco Rubio in 2016 or Ron DeSantis or whomever, many of them will come home. And on the other side of the coin, on the Democrat side, Joe Biden's handling of the Israel and Gaza, the Israel and Hamas situation, and his handling of other things where people think, even most Democrats think, that Joe Biden doesn't have it all together. Those individuals who stay home will count in critically important swing states. So it's the combination of Nikki Haley voters, quote, coming home to the Republican Party, and Joe Biden, regular Joe Biden voters, particularly young people in states like Michigan or Pennsylvania or Georgia, who are not going to vote for Joe Biden. Even, as Joe Biden went to HBCUs last week and was protested by young, educated black college students, those individuals may very well leave the top of the ballot blank. And it's the combination of those two things that's really going to make an impact in swing states, particularly in Michigan, I would say Pennsylvania, even here in Virginia, where in the polls, Donald Trump is running competitively with Joe Biden. And so if we're looking this far out with the polls and Trump is competitive in some of these states he lost by a significant margin in the last two elections, then we're looking at an entirely new electoral landscape come November.
Well, Donald Trump was in Minnesota. He lost by 2 points to Hillary, lost by 2 points to Joe Biden, and he said that he would never go back to Minnesota. Then he went back to Minnesota because it's very close. And so you're right. Do you think that, and we've been talking about Biden's speech for the last several days, of course. Do you think that speech did more harm than good for Joe Biden?
I think that anytime Joe Biden is in front of a camera, it probably is doing more harm than good at this point, because his handlers, and again, you and I have spoken about this before, he is incredibly scripted, and you can just tell. The average voter can tell. They can't quite put their finger on it necessarily, but they say something is off about this. And when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the economy, I was in northern Kentucky just a couple of nights ago with Congressman Thomas Massey at his primary election night party, and he had it at what I would call a dive bar. And I'm sitting there at the bar before the event, and every single person was concerned about the cost of groceries, the ability to pay their mortgage, and what was going on in our schools. And that transcends whatever Joe Biden is talking about on stage, and it is a deep concern for most Americans, regardless of what's going on, in Washington and Congress. They want to be able to provide for their family, put food on the table, save for retirement, and ensure their kids get a good education.
Well, coming up at 7:35, trigger warning for some folks, but the Wall Street Journal did a really good job of comparing and contrasting Obama's speech to Morehouse in 2013 and Joe Biden in 2024. The differences are incredibly stark. And so it's almost like Biden doesn't, and one of the quotes that I saw, and I played this yesterday, one of the quotes was, Joe Biden doesn't even know who we are anymore. Do you think that's accurate as far as the black community?
The difference between Barack Obama and many conservatives will say it doesn't matter who the messenger is. Conservative principles should resonate with everyone, but it does matter who the messenger is. And somebody like Barack Obama is going to resonate with an HBCU audience more so than any other white Democrat, and certainly more than a guy who says, if you vote for Donald Trump, you ain't black. Like that kind of, those constant racially tinged things that Joe Biden has said over his last 50 years in politics that are frustrating for conservatives now come to fruition. And I think it is important for conservatives to say, we need the right messengers in these places. We need to be able to go to the Latino community, to the black community, to suburban women with the right messenger to talk about our principles. And if we can do that, somebody like Joe Biden beclowning himself on a stage at an HBCU is going to be a sharp contrast to voters who do not often give Republican candidates a chance at the ballot.
Now, you and I, Matthew Hurtt joining us, you and I were texting back and forth before this, and we're talking a little bit about this. I call them controversies. The flag thing at Justice Samuel Alito's home. Now, it was reported a couple of days ago that a couple of years ago he was flying an upside down American flag outside of his home. Now, breaking news this morning from the New York Times: another provocative flag was flown at another Alito home. It was they say the Appeal to Heaven flag, a symbol carried on January 6th and associated with a push for more Christian-minded government. And CNN, they're not wall-to-wall, but they are leading with this story. And I'm trying to figure out, maybe I'm not smart enough to understand why this is a big deal, but it seems to me like they're out for Alito. This is on his property, and I'm assuming he can fly any flag he wants.
This is the stupidest witch hunt I've seen in this regard. The pine tree flag. The left wants you to think that American history started on January 6th and people storming the Capitol. Yeah. The pine tree flag has its roots in the American Revolution, which is a deeply American concept. The far left, in their critical theory, wants to undo our institutions. And so to attack a flag this is similar to the Gadsden flag, the yellow flag with a rattlesnake. It says, "Don't tread on me."
Yep.
All of these are revolutionary themes that are deeply entrenched in our American memory and in our American identity. And this is further proof that they want to undo. You can fly whatever flag you want to fly in the classroom. It can have as many triangles and colors on it as it wants, but you can't say our American founding is important and I'm going to fly a representation of this. All of these flags, the Gadsden flag, the Pine Tree flag, were also flown at Tea Party rallies on Legislative Plaza in Nashville in 2009 and 2010. And so this is another effort of the left to diminish and destroy our American institutions and our American memory, to recast America as a racist, pro-insurrection kind of outlet where anybody who is conservative is not in line with the American dream, and that is absolutely incorrect.
Yeah, they're trying to make it seem like he's, some rabid Trump supporter or something, and we don't know, but the bottom line is you're right. CNN is selling this like they're trying to sell the hush money trial against Donald Trump as well. So, Matthew, that's all the time we have for this morning. How can people find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Matthew Hurtt, MatthewHurtt.